I first became acquainted with the Nakazawas about a month and a half ago, and since then I have just been impressed with their faithfulness in their whole journey. Just how they've been faithful to the Lord, following Him from one call to another call to where they are presently. They're faithful to their mission that God has called them to as well. If you sign up back there on their email updates, you will be surprised that they, even though they're right here for the time being, they are constantly in contact with all those people back in Tokyo who they are ministering to. And we get prayer requests to be able to pray for all of them. They're faithful to their family life. They have their 4 kids here as they are all in these different stages of life. They're ministering to them. And then, of course, they're so faithful to their supporters. Shige was going to be here this morning, and he called me just day before yesterday, and he was coughing, and he had all of these symptoms. I'm so sorry. And Luann has picked up the ball, and she is going to be sharing with us this morning about their ministry overseas. So if you'll welcome Luann Nakazawa this morning, she's going to share.
Thank you. Okay, it works. I'll just stand here and kind of look at that, if that's okay. And can I test this clicker?
Yes, ma'am. Is it on green?
Oh, no. Here we go. Where do I just turn it on?
There you go. Get a beat?
I had beep.
You got a beat.
It's making a noise, but
Okay, we'll get
There's
this
also
one.
the light blinking.
As I drove here this morning, so we flew in last night, so I have 3 of my kids here, they're in the back, and hopefully they'll each say something this morning. I think they will. And my oldest, she's at Biola, so we get to see her hopefully, maybe even today, hopefully. And so we're excited for that, and hopefully my husband will be able to join us maybe on Tuesday. We're going to be looking at some universities. My son Joel is a junior. Out in this area, but I have so many memories. My daughter, when she came home from the hospital, I'll be telling you a little bit about us, well, a lot about us, but she was born at Little Company of Mary, my oldest, and the first time we took her out, we took a walk in the park right over here.
Oh, wow.
So is that called Wilson Park? Yeah. So a lot of memories. I used to work at Toyota, so that just used to be in this area. Does it work now? Yes. Okay, great. So we are very sorry that Shige can't be here. We would have loved to have met him, and I hope you will someday. I'm sure you will. This is him. Can you guys see that? It's okay? Yeah, so he was born in Tokyo. You know, you can tell those shorts were not in style. And that was like right after his entrance to first grade. They get all dressed up in a suit. His family was, they owned a Chinese restaurant in Tokyo. So he's standing in front of the Chinese restaurant. Yeah. This is, I don't know if you're familiar, but that's his brother and him. And he did not grow up in a Christian family. And so they were very much a part of all of the festivals that they have in Japan. This is a religious festival where they carry that little shrine around the neighborhood, and they were very involved, his father and his family. I wouldn't call them very religious, but they were very much part of what you do in Japan, the culture. This is him. I'm sure you can pick him out. Yeah, that is his high school. Here, he made it closer. But you see, he went to an all-boys school. They wear the uniforms. No smile on his face. He didn't know the Lord. And you'll see his face has changed since he's learned, since he became a believer. That's like in high school. He was very much into javelin throwing.
Oh, wow.
All the way through college. That's what got him into college, actually. He didn't study a lot, so he is a smart guy, but he was very focused on the javelin. And then you can see, that's a picture of him at his graduation. Look at that smile. He came to know the Lord his senior year of college through Crew at his campus. He was in Japan all this time, and a missionary, he had never even really known anything about Christianity, and then in his senior year, a missionary came to him, and that is a pretty neat story. They were having no fruit that day. They were doing like cold turkey evangelism around the campus, at his university. Nobody wanted to talk to them. And Shige was just in the cafeteria writing his journal in English. He was trying to learn English, but he didn't have anybody to study it with, but he was just trying. He was writing in English. He always was interested in English. And this missionary came to him, and he was from California. Yeah, and he came up to him, he said, "Oh, hello, it looks like you're writing in English, and he offered to give him free English lessons. And my husband was like, "Sure," but he said, "But we'll study the Bible." I mean, and sure, why not? And so for 6 months, they studied the Bible every week, and that's when my husband realized that was the truth and came to Christ. So that's... Okay, so I'll just go real, you see me, I'm here. I'm from Iowa, so that's a lot different than, I don't know, has anybody even been to Iowa? Hey!
It's like you fly over really fast.
I'm surprised, we got some people, I've tried to get Pastor Dean, if you've ever met him, he won't come there, I keep trying to. Anyway, why would you leave California, right? I know. So I went to Japan in college, right after college, to teach English. These are some of my students. And actually, Shige was my student. I first worked at a school this was an all-girls school, but first I worked at just a conversation school, and he was my student. That's where I met him. And he was a new Christian when I first met him, and we started going to church together. So yeah, 3 years later, got to keep moving. Let's keep the clock. What time should I finish? Oh, anytime, right? 2, 3. Just say a time. 21. Okay, got it. So this is Meg, our oldest, when we in California. So my husband came to Biola. That's why we came to California. But we weren't married yet, but when we got engaged, he was at Biola. And so I moved here, and this was a culture shock for me, coming from Japan after 3 years. So yeah, I didn't really know where was I from by that time. And then to come here, and I needed to find a job because he was a student at Biola. And praise the Lord, I was introduced to a person who worked at Toyota, and I got a job at Toyota. So it was fabulous. We lived in Gardena, and I didn't want to have a commute because I had done the 1.5-hour commute one way and back in Tokyo, the packed trains. I had done that for 3 years, so I didn't want to do a commute. So I didn't have a commute, just right around here. And then we went to, it wasn't called that then, but it was Hope Chapel Gateway and Pastor Dean. That's how, they had a Japanese ministry, and that's how we got hooked up with that church, really close to here. And now it's merged with Nova Community Church, which I think you guys were meeting there at first. Yeah, okay, so we have long history, 23 years about with that, yeah. Okay, so, and then we were in LA, and God called us to be missionaries, and we thought it would be Japan, right? But no, he called us to an unreached part of the world, and we didn't know, at the time, we didn't even know which parts were unreached, and so we started studying, and God laid Turkey on our hearts. And just to go quickly back, my husband had lived in Oman in the Middle East for 1.5 years after he graduated from college as a PE teacher. So he really had an interest in Muslim ministry. I didn't so much, but Turkey really, both of us felt like that would be a good place for us to go. We went there. We didn't even take a vision trip. We just went, and we thought we can do this for 3 years at least. That was our first commitment. And we stayed there for 10, and it was a wonderful time of seeing some small churches starting. This is like the men's group and the women's group. This was the first Turkish man that was baptized in that area. He was baptized in a horse trough, and it was full of bees when he was baptized.
Oh,
they each got stung once, I think, but could have been worse. So you never know what it's going to be like. So both of my sons were born in Turkey. So then we moved, after 10 years, God called us to Japan, and we thought he would call us back to Japan, and he did. And it was right after the big tsunami, and the earthquake and the tsunami. We went that same year, back about in November. We didn't know, we thought maybe we were even going to go to that area, but then God really called us to Tokyo. And that's where Shige's from. And you guys don't need this. By the way, this is usually for Iowans, so it's a little different. I think you guys know about Toyota and all those things, and all the Japanese things. But for some people, they're like, oh, I didn't know that was Japan. I'm sure some of you watched the Tokyo Olympics. We were hoping to be there, and then our house was just 20 minutes from the stadium. But then they didn't allow spectators, and we were, there's a pandemic. I'm sure you heard of that. So let's move to a little bit of how Japan is so spiritually lost. It's a very prosperous nation, but it's very spiritually lost. So many people ask us why Japan doesn't have very many Christians. And I'm going to show you a video. It's going to talk about just how few Christians there are. When like Korea has quite a few, China, why doesn't Japan? And this kind of gives you a little bit about maybe some of the reasons. Of course, we don't know. Only God knows, and He's the one who has to change the climate there. But right now, there's only the percent of evangelical Christians, 0.57. But then those, the ones that go to church, is 0.25%. So it is considered the second largest unreached people groups in the world. Japan is. So I'm just going to go very quick through this because I think a lot of you probably know this. People ask what's the worldview and religion, and it really is a mixture. And Japan is like that. They mix things. They take the best of this and the best of that and make something kind of new. And it's kind of how their worldview and religion is. What do you think this represents of a religion? Yes, this represents Shintoism. And that's the actual indigenous religion. I'm not going to go through all this, but it's Shinto. And what do you think this represents? Buddhism, and that's also a religion. And Shintoism and Buddhism, they're not completely the same, but they mix them and do some things one time, some things the other. Like you get married in Shinto, you get buried Buddhist, those kind of things. So I won't go through that. So this my husband, it's been closed now, but this was his family altar. I don't know, do some of you guys have family altars if you have a background? Those are all his grandparents and great-grandparents and uncle. Their pictures above. And when the family comes to visit, they go to this. If you're not a Christian, you go and you light a candle and you clap your hands and you feel like you're praying to your ancestors. It's your connection with your ancestors. So you can imagine why for Japanese to change to Christianity, they think, am I going to lose my connection with my family? And that seems very shameful. You can see why it's a big obstacle to the faith. And what do you think this represents? Yeah, Confucianism. And that's also a big part of the thinking in Japan. And then this, you probably can't figure out what this would be. I'll just say he calls it, but it's a big force in Japan, groupism. So you've probably heard of it. The nail that sticks out gets hammered down. The nail that sticks up, that's so Japanese. You want to be the same, conform. So to be a Christian would be very different. And that is another obstacle. This is in Japanese, this is a board. So Japan did have a big persecution of Christians. This was banning Christianity in the 1612 to 1873. That's what this was saying. It was against the law. Right now it's not, but it was. I'm sure if you've seen like the movie Silence or read that book, it talks a lot about how Christians were persecuted. They had to, if they were hunting for Christians, they'd put these pictures of Jesus on the ground and you'd have to step on it. And that was to prove you're not a Christian. These are martyrs. So there is a real history of persecution of the Christians. These are the martyrs of Nagasaki, very famous. So with all that, I went pretty fast. We have to have a hope, right? As we're working in Japan, we've been there 10 years. We haven't seen a lot of fruit from that time, and we're going to go back. But we have this promise, Matthew 16:18, and it says, "And I tell you, you are Peter, and on this rock I will build my church, and the gates of hell shall not prevail against it." Matthew 16:18. We know who's building the church. we're there, we're his servants, but it is God who's building, and it's his church. I'm going to show a video, and then you'll finally get to hear Shige talking, and it talks a lot about what type of church that we're planting or trying to plant in Tokyo.
When you come to Tokyo, it doesn't take much time before you can realize how dense and immense the city is. In fact, the city of Tokyo is actually the heart of the largest metropolis in the world with 38 million population. And most of these people do not know Christ. And so here you see the largest concentration of the unreached people of the world. Living in this city, it's easy to be overwhelmed by the size and the speed. It's very easy to feel small by yourself and ask yourself, what in the world can I do here? We see in the book of Jonah that God had a great compassion on the city of Nineveh with 120,000 people who were said to be ignorant about which way is left and which way is right spiritually. And much like that here in Tokyo, this place is filled with just millions of people continuing their life day to day without knowing that they've been made to find life as they come to know this Creator. We believe that it is God Himself who is zealous to be glorified in the changed lives of millions of Japanese people, and that is why we're here. So as we prayed for Tokyo, we were led to the conviction that whatever we do, we have to do it in a way that is multiplication-minded, because this city is simply unreachable by a limited number of professionals. We have to do ministry in a way that is simple enough for those trained lay people, doing a way that is good content, good substance needed for discipleship and multiplication. Something else that we've noticed about this city is that while it's really dense, if you look closely enough, there are a lot of small spaces that people can gather. It can be restaurants, it can be cafes, it can be homes. And we thought, for these lay people to be able to do ministry, it has to be simple, it has to be small. God has already filled this city with those small spaces where people can meet. Christians can get together, having a good, just meaningful fellowship, putting the Bible in their center and kind of digging into the scriptural truth as a group. And if that type of gospel community that is really enjoying the life of Christ multiplied, that would be a way where the city can eventually be filled with the knowledge of Christ.
A lot of the ministry that I'm involved in happens right here in our house. Being a mom of 4 kids keeps me pretty busy. I asked the Lord that He would bring the work here to my home where I am, and He has. Now we have our church meeting in our living room every week. A lot of exciting things happen right here on this street in front of our house. The kids all have gone to the school right behind me. Kay still goes there, he's in 5th grade. And so a lot of the local kids who go to that school, they end up coming to our house. We're so happy that we can be part of this community.
So please pray for an extraordinary faith and wisdom as we as a team continue to shepherd this movement. May the Japanese come to know the all-surpassing worth of knowing Jesus for the glory of God.
Okay, so normally Shige would go into a lot more in depth, but we don't have the time anyway, about the church and how we run it and what we do. But since you got me, I thought, how it showed on the video what my ministry was more in the house and things, the people coming. I thought we'd maybe talk a little bit about that since you have me. But this is Pray Yamanote, and this is a ministry that's how we came to the type of church plant that we want to do. It's more of a house church, a small church, because we would pray on the train. It's a 1-hour loop on the Yamanote. Has anybody been to Tokyo? Have you been on the Yamanote train? It's right in the middle. Okay, it's one of the main ones, commuter trains. And they get on there every Tuesday and ride the whole train and pray for Tokyo. And we have back on the table over there, if you would like, I do have some bookmarks that say Pray Yamanote, and it has the name of every station. And if you would like to join in prayer, there is a Zoom group from organized by a group from Hawaii, and they actually pray at the same time when they're on the train, and it's Monday night here. And so you could get one of those bookmarks if you like. We also have prayer cards back there if you would like to pick up one of our family. Okay, now see, you're really getting mine. I added my own slides. What do you think this is? What do you think? Yes.
A bin full of batteries.
Yes, she's exactly right. It is a bin full of batteries. Why is that in this? Yes. So I just want to show you what it's like to be living overseas. How many of you have lived overseas? Aren't there things that you just don't know what to do with? So for me, I did not know how to throw away batteries in Tokyo. So I just put them, I had behind my drawer under my sink there, I put that bin and it would be back there, and I would just toss the batteries for 8 years. I did that. These are my batteries, but I'll share, one of our prayer requests is that we had to move out of our home, and so I had to deal with this. And I think that kind of represents our life. Aren't there things that we just toss behind, and we should deal with them, and we need to deal with them, and God wants us to deal with them. So if anything, maybe you can imagine this and ask yourself in your life, is there something God wants you to deal with that you've been just throwing behind, and He says it's time for you to deal with that. And I had to finally deal with that, and we found a dump. I love that. And they all went to the dump at the end. So all of this, this is the house that we had to move out of. It was my husband's great-grandparents' home, and they were going to sell it. And so right before we came back, we got to America in July, we had to empty the house. And in Japan, that's why it was hard to know where to throw away batteries. You have to know how to recycle everything. If you want to throw something away, you have to pay to throw it away. And so these are all the things. That's Joel. He moves most of those things outside with Shige. And these, we had to pay for each thing and put a sticker on it and call and reserve them for them to come, put it out. It was very particular, and that's very much the culture. So it's been an adjustment for me just to get used to the culture in Japan. This is the room. It was in the video, but this was the room that we would have church in. Well, now it's you're going to see a picture of where we've just recently seen pictures of it being destroyed. And it's very hard for our family, so if you wouldn't mind praying for us. We don't know where we're going to live when we get back. And this was a very dear place to us. We did ask them to save all of these. Are really, really special Japanese window covers. Even most Japanese who would come to this house were in awe of them, and so we did have them saved. So the movers are wrapping them up. I want to tell you about my friend Yoshika. This is in our little garden. We had a little garden at our house which was also destroyed, and she had given me a rose and I had planted it in the garden, but I didn't have time to dig it up and try to save it. So I had to apologize to her, my really good friend. I'm like, I'm sorry, I didn't have time to dig up this rose, and so can we take a picture by the rose? And she is a very good friend. We've shared the gospel with her so many times, Yoshika. And her daughter was in the same class as my daughter, my oldest, when we moved to this area. And she hasn't yet believed. So if you could pray for her. She's very open, but yet there's just those barriers to coming to faith. She called us. We were here in Iowa. We were going to a football game, and we get this call, and we're like, oh, it's Yoshika. We better answer it. She answers it, and she says, I need you. I wish you were here. She says, my grandmother died. And her grandmother was the closest person to her growing up. She really took care of her. She said, where is my grandmother? Is she in heaven? That's what she asked. Please tell me she's in heaven. Oh, what do you say when somebody who you don't think is in heaven asks you that? My husband just kind of prayed to God, and he said to her, well, there is a heaven, and I do hope that your grandmother is there and she believed in Jesus. And but we will be praying for you. We love her so much, Yoshika. So that's why we're in Japan, because people want to know what's the truth, what is after death, and we want to share that hope with them. So please keep praying for her. we were packing up, she came to help pack up, just such a good friend, and that's her daughter. This is Meg, my daughter, and that's her daughter. One of our teammates in Japan is still meeting with her daughter, Amma, every week, and they're having a lot of opportunity to share about Jesus to our teammates. We'll just really pray for them. This is, everything's stored. There's the house right now. Well, it might be gone by now. But it's different when you look at that and you're like, oh, that's the wall of the kitchen. Oops, I forgot to take that down. Oh, there's my bathtub that I took a bath in every night that I miss. So it's not easy as a family. So just really pray for us as we transition into what's new. We're excited about what God has. But we'd like to live in the same area. But now we're in Iowa. Let's not be sad too long. So so we'll be in Iowa until July. And really, I grew up on a farm. So, and the place we live is our lane is 1/4 of a mile long, and it leads to a gravel road. That's how remote we are. You can't see our house from the gravel road. So what a contrast for my kids. I think that they are pretty amazing to transition the way they do to different cultures. And, okay, so Joel even joined the football team. You had to have that up there. He'd never done football, but that's what you do in Iowa. And Kaya, do you mind coming up here and saying what this is? Yay! Is this on? This one? Yeah, this one's on. What is that? What are you doing?
That's sports day that the Japanese public schools have every year. It's where the old school is divided into 2 teams, and then they do a bunch of stuff, and it's fun.
Thank you. If any of you speak Japanese, my kids all speak Japanese. They all went to the public school until age 6th grade. And so this year, he's been in 3 schools. He did the Japanese school until it finishes, in April or into March. And then he started a Christian private school in Japan that now they all go to. And then came to Iowa and had to learn to go to that school. Okay, so this is an example of having people in our homes. Every Christmas, we've had cookie making parties with all their classmates, and this is back when Kaya, there he is, in preschool, and all the moms and the kids came, and we did that every year with all of them. This is Mickey and her class. Would you like to say anything? Oh, great. Mickey's 15, Kaya's 12 right now.
So at our house in Japan, we had a tradition where every year we would have a cookie party, and we would invite half of our class to our house. We had a pretty small public school, so I would invite all the girls in my class, and my brothers would invite all the boys in their class, and we would make cookies, and then my parents would use that time as a chance.
I was going to share
a chance to tell them the story of Christ's birth, and so that was probably the only opportunity that my classmates and their classmates had to actually hear the story. And we would make cookies, and it was a really fun thing that we did every year.
And I'm going to show, this is actually in our house at our church, the beginning of our church. And I just thought, Joel, would you come up, and this will be probably the last thing he'll talk about because we're out of time. The format and how we do our church in such a simple way that the youth, they actually were able to lead their own church during the COVID, the pandemic, because we had to go to Zoom. And one of the families, their Wi-Fi couldn't support all of their devices, so they had to separate the youth to meet at 4:30 and then the older people at 6. So he was part of the youth and the leadership of that.
Hello. Good morning. Okay. So basically, I'll just tell you kind of how it goes. We had 3 leaders. I'm one of them. They're all like high schoolers. So it's all led by us. And then basically the kids that join us are Mickey and Kaya's ages. And yeah. Anyway, so basically during COVID we had to do this online, of course. So it's all over Zoom, so you have that little screen in front of you and then you're just talking to it, and we all go to like separate rooms so that our Wi-Fi connects and whatnot.
Wow.
Anyway, but so we usually began off with some like games to, icebreaker, let everyone feel comfortable. It's not supposed to be a very like me talking to them and them just listening. It's more interactive, so it's like a Bible study almost. So we'll do games, then we'll do some worship, and then we'll just hop into like a little discussion. We'll usually choose a Bible passage, and then I'll come up with like some questions that we can discuss over it, and then we talk about it, and then once we're done with that, then we try to usually like apply it to our lives or something, and then we'll have like a time of prayer requests, and then we'll pray, and then we'll just finish, and we can stay and talk a little bit more, just fellowship or whatever we want to do. And then yeah, that's about it. I don't know. It was the best we could do during COVID.
Yeah.
We tried our best. Normally we would have all been in person, but since we're all from separate church, you didn't really explain that, but we're kind of spread over Tokyo, so to get together would have been more challenging. So in that way, COVID helped us all get together over Zoom, and yeah.
Thank you. I think the point was it's a simple structure so that lay people can also lead it. The youth were great to be able to lead it, to show us that it is a simple kind of format. Because right now Japan doesn't have people going to seminary, so most of the pastors are age 65 and above right now, so they're going to see a lot of churches dying, and right now there are hardly any churches in Japan, and now they're actually going to be dying, and so we needed to have something that's different that could be led by lay people. So that's all I have. Thank you.